Welcome to the Coalition of Scrubs, and yes, that was all of our collective natural voices singing.
I'm the man, I got the plan. When it hits the fan, do all I can, do all I can.
Hey guys, Christian the Haver Card Man coming back at you with another card discussion today, and this time we are taking a look at Abyss Dweller, the most generic rank 4 that you can throw in pretty much any deck. But before we get into that, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below so you guys can stay updated on all of the future Coalition content coming out. And while you're at it, be sure to check the description down below the video as well, so you can check out all of the other creators that are involved with the Coalition of Scrubs. They're all wonderful people getting together to make you guys some awesome Yu-Gi-Oh content. So be sure to go down there and show them all some love. They all really deserve it. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get on to today's discussion about Abyss Dweller. Like I said, probably one of the most generic rank 4s that just about any deck can throw in, and you know, just if you have that extra slot in your extra deck and you have the ability to make rank 4, boom, it's there for you. So let's get starting off talking about the stats of this card, because of course these stats always apply to different synergies with different decks. So, like I mentioned, you have a generic rank 4 card that just requires 2 level 4 monsters, so super easy to summon, and it has 1700 attack, 1400 defense, and is a water attribute monster. So already you got some pretty decent synergies there. A lot of fun water decks right now. Makes it really easy to play through stuff like the Barrier Statue of the Torrent combo, or like the Lock with the Needle Fiber. If you already have 2 level 4s on field, you can at least go and do an Abyss Dweller. You know, so there's good stuff there. The 1700 attack is okay. It's like mediocre. Most people throw them in defense because you just really need shotgun as effect, so it's not even a huge deal. So let's go ahead and get into the real meat and potatoes of this card, because obviously the stats are still important to look over, but they're not as important as the actual effect of this card in this specific case. So let's go ahead and get into that. So the first effect here, starting off with the card, is that while this guy has a water monster as material attached to it, all water monsters gain 500 attack points. So that's a nice little boost there. It puts your Abyss Dweller up to a 2200, and any other water monsters you have get an extra 500 attack point boost. Pretty good if you're playing a pure water deck, but most cases people aren't really running the Abyss Dweller in the pure water. It's a splashable card that you can throw into just about any deck. The second effect is the one that really matters, whereas a quick effect, you can attach 1 material from him, so that until the end of that turn, your opponent cannot activate effects from the graveyard. Now, this includes so many things. This includes just normal activated effects from the graveyard. This includes triggered effects from the graveyard. So you can no longer do stuff like you can't banish a Destiny Hero Malicious to special summon another one from deck. You can't use like Shaddoll cards that have been sent to the graveyard. You can't trigger those effects. This thing, against the right deck, will shut it down, because 9 times out of 10 of the Abyss Dweller, you're going to be activating that effect to detach a material in the standby phase of your opponent's turn. And the thing is, this is a lingering effect, so once he detaches that material and he gets his effect off, that effect is just there for the turn. Even if he's removed from field, it's the same thing as true King of All Calamities. That effect is just there until the end of that turn. It's just a present continuous thing, regardless of whether or not the monster is on field. And like I mentioned, against the right decks, this card can really hurt. Now, there is a couple of ways to stop it. For one, hitting it with the Imperm in response to it activating its effect in the standby phase. That's a really easy way to go there. If you have it in hand and you have no cards on field, just slap down an Imperm in response to them detaching the material, so you can negate its effects and they don't have a chance to respond to it with the Abyss Dweller, so that they can get that effect off guaranteed. Or if they're playing a combo deck and they summon their Abyss Dweller mid-combo, or even at the end of a combo, you can slap down a Nibiru. That'll just clear it off the board before they even get the chance to use it. A little more situational. I mean, if you can just disrupt them before they even get the setup for the Abyss Dweller, that's always a good one too. But so there are some ways to out it. It's not as easy to out as most other cards. Once again, a Dark Ruin or more is not going to do anything, because of the fact that, once again, it can activate in standby phase. So same thing, Lightning Storm will not affect it, evenly matched will not affect it. As long as it's already used its ability, it doesn't even matter. It's done the job it's supposed to do. Sure, it could do it for an additional turn, but it doesn't really need to. So we've kind of talked about ways to out the card. I kind of want to talk about like strategies that it actually affects. So if you look at the current metagame, you have Adamancipator and Eldritch. Obviously, this is kind of a blowout against Eldritch, because if they're trying to get their resources at the end of the turn during the end phase by banishing their spells and traps in the graveyard to reset their resources to their field, they can't do that because those are graveyard effects. So now you've just kind of disrupted their engine for a turn, they're not allowed to use those cards for that turn. Of course, they could do it during your turn. If they're the trap cards, they could banish them from the graveyard then, but you still delay them that entire turn, because once traps are set, they cannot be activated that turn anyways. So if they try to set up their disruption on your turn, they can't really use it until their next turn, so it doesn't even matter. And by that point in time, you might be able to out-advantage them and get the game for yourself. Adamantipator, there's only a few cards that this really affects. I think it stops Block Dragon. There's like a few other cards, but for the most part, their monsters are activating on field or in hand, so theirs don't really matter all that much. So Bestiwiller is not really going to do much against Adamantipator's. Adamantipator players are most likely actually running this in their extra deck, or at least as like a side deck option, or whatever, as just a backup plan, because it's so easy for them to make a rank 4. So the two biggest meta decks, only one of them is really affected by it, and even then they can still kind of play through it if they know what they're doing, if they play it just right. For some other decks, I mean, like, occasionally you'll see a Shaddoll deck. This will once again kill a Shaddoll deck. It can slow down other strategies like heroes, like they won't be able to get the Malicious, they won't be able to use the Shadow Mist, get those searches. There's a few things they won't be able to do. It'll just kind of slow the strategy down, but it won't necessarily kill it, because it only negates effects in the graveyard, not effects that are on the field or in the hand relating to the graveyard. So it is kind of a hat and hat there. There's a few other strategies that are just kind of iffy about it. I mean, just if you're playing anything that relies on using effects in the graveyard, obviously Abyss Dweller just turns those off for a turn. So if you need those on the same turn, and you got an Abyss as an opponent with Abyss Dweller on the field, you're probably a little bit out of luck. Now let's go ahead and talk about other rank 4 options, because like I mentioned, this is a really easy generic rank 4 that if you just have the space in your extra deck for it, you can just slap it in there if you really want to. But let's talk about some other options, because this one might not actually be the best generic rank 4 to just slap into any deck. So obviously right now with the release of Gravedigger's Trap Hole out of Eternity Code, we now have we have access to Trapcheck's Rafflesia, which now this gives us a rank 4 monster that is an out to Nibiru. If we can get this out before 5 summons, this gives us a way to negate Nibiru by being able to pitch that Gravedigger's Trap Hole, banish the Nibiru, and even deal 2,000 points of damage to our opponent. Just insane, all just by setting up an easy rank 4 that so many decks can do, especially with the release of Parallel Exceed out of Echo as well, which means that anytime we link summon a monster, we can just slap out 2 Parallel Exceeds and get an immediate rank 4 monster. So, pretty incredible there, because she, once again, is only a 2 level 4 generic monster, so super easy to play there. We also have the Utopia double package. Now this one does require 2 extra deck slots plus 1 main deck slot, but the nice thing about this combo is that it does get you to an immediate 10k beat stick that can end 8 out of 10 games. I'd give it that much, because there's a chance you can get disrupted, there's a chance it's not enough damage, or there's a chance you can't attack directly. Well, there's a chance you can't attack at all because your opponent doesn't have any monsters. So there's a few reasons the Utopia Double is not the best option, but there are several decks where it does make the most sense, especially like control decks that just can't output that much damage right away, but they can get to a rank 4 easy enough. Like Guru Control can easily do this. I think Altergeist can. I haven't played Altergeist enough to really know, but it's one of those things where if you can make an easy rank 4, you can have a 10k beat stick and basically have a Boral Sword with only 2 monsters. So it is nice for that. We also have Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer, and Tornado Dragon, both of which are completely generic rank 4 monsters with 2 materials apiece. Castel allows you to either flip monsters face down or shuffle them back into the deck at the cost of either 1 or 2 materials respectively, and then Tornado allows you to blow up back row. It really just kind of depends on the situation, on what you're more against. If you already have things that can out monsters, you can not really worry so much about the Castel. If you already have stuff that deals with spell and traps or just back row in general, then you can get rid of the Tornado and go for the Castel instead if you really wanted to. It's just extra means to kind of control your opponent's board and get rid of real problematic cards that you have to deal with. Now, the nice thing about Tornado Dragon is he has a quick effect, so you can activate it during your opponent's turn if you want to pop like a field spell or just a continuous spell or whatever they're using that you just don't like seeing on the field. You can just pop it right away. We also have the other 2 extra deck slot monsters, which is going to be the Bahamut Shark with the Totally Awesome. This is just kind of a hand-in-hand. You can't really have one without the other, because most decks can't really go into a Totally Awesome naturally, but they can go into a Bahamut Shark if they've got 2 level 4 monsters that are water. This does have to be specifically water, but if you can get the Bahamut Shark, and you can go into a Totally Awesome, not only do you have 2 bodies on field, you have one of which that can negate, and actually get you an extra resource if you negate the right card. So, really spicy tech right there. I love the Bahamut Shark Toad combo. I just need to use it more often because I'm kind of lame. But I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's definitely something people should test out. Once again, not all decks can run it because it does specifically have to be 2 level 4 water monsters, and that's not always the easiest to fulfill. Not every deck can do that. So next up we have Daigusto Emerald. This guy is only at he's only placed at limited on the Forbidden Limited list. And he's just a good way to kind of extend on your plays. He's a miniature Pot of Avarice, just as a rank 4, being able to shuffle back 3 monsters into your deck and draw a card. So it can allow you to keep going on the plays. This is good for stuff like Adamantipator if you just need extra things to keep hopping off with. Of course, they'd probably prefer the Gallant Granite because rock, but it's still good nonetheless. I mean, there's so many combo decks that could easily benefit off of this. If you play it just right, Heroes could use this. Really just any combo deck that has level 4 monsters would love this card. So Daigusto Emerald, probably not the best option, but if you want the extension, he is there. And speaking of extension, Dugaris the Timeless, number 60, is also another good option for rank 4, because he has 3 different effects, one of which could provide you with OTK, one of which could just reset your hand if you have a brick hand, kind of like a Saryuja effect, miniature Saryuja effect anyhow, and then special summon from the graveyard, so you can get an extra body from the graveyard if you really want to. So he does provide further extension, really just allows you to pop with combos. He does have his restrictions with each effect, so keep that in mind. You really have to know that you're going to be able to push for game the turn that you use him, otherwise your next turn might be a little bit skewed, because you're either missing your main phase 1, missing your draw phase, or you're missing your battle phase. So do keep that in mind if you want to push for game. Alright, so the next one I want to talk about is Evil Sworn Evil Swarm Exciton Knight. This guy is just kind of a blowout card, an easy rank 4 going second. They can use just kind of equalize board state, and you know, if your opponent popped off too much on turn 1, but they don't have a means to stop your monster from popping off, then you could just use your Evil Swarm Exciton Knight and kind of just equalize the board state a little bit. It's almost like having an extra deck evenly matched, but like a nerfed version, I guess you could say. That's probably about the closest you can get to really describing this guy. So, speaking of equalizing boards, we also have a Silent Honor Arc, just an easy rank 4, that you can use to steal your opponent's monster and equip it to him as material. I believe it is targeting, but it's not destruction, so you can get around things like Dingirsu, or, you know, just anything that prevents you from being able to destroy it by card effects. As long as they can still be affected by card effects, you can target it and steal it. So, I mean, it's really good for getting rid of those really problematic cards. Kind of like a Dingirsu effect where it just sends to the graveyard without targeting, but in this case it does target. There's still so many things that it bypasses though, so really handy there. And then it can attach it to it as material and use that material as protection for itself. So, I mean, you really can't go wrong there. It's kind of a double bonus for you. Or we also have the Baguska, who is actually a really OG guy here. He does a lot. Especially if you open up a brick hand, but you have just enough to be able to get into a rank 4. If you can throw out that Baguska turn 1, or some cases even turn 2, you can actually just end up stalling out opponent until you have a game. It's kind of like an extra deck Mystic Mind, but not quite as bad, because it does not affect Link monsters, of course, since it can't change the defense position, which is kind of sad. But with Master Rule 5, not everybody is running a whole Link engine right now. They're more into fusions, exceeds, and synchros, so it is more viable now than it was in Master Rule 4 for sure. So that's all the different rank 4s I want to talk about. So, I mean, going through those, it doesn't seem like Abyss Dweller is probably the best option, even in the current state of the metagame, but it is still a really good option. Well, like I said, so it's not going to be the best for every deck, but the nice thing about Abyss Dweller is that it is so generic and so easy to summon for most decks, and then it can provide disruption against almost every deck in the meta in some way, shape, or form. So it is still a card worth running. It's a situational thing. You really got to find out what's best for your playstyle and what's going to work best in your extra deck. No one can really tell you like any one set formula on how to deck build. You really got to be able to make these choices yourself and be like conscious about the way you play and the way other people play in the game. So that's all I really got for you guys today. Thank you so much for tuning into my Abyss Dweller discussion, and your support on this channel has been insane lately. If you haven't yet, be sure to go click that like and that subscribe button so you can stay updated with all future Coalition content. We love you guys so much. Your support, once again, is just insane. Alright, I hope to see you guys all in the next discussion time. Remember to have fun and make your move. Peace out.
I'm a love giver.